Number 20. Giancarlo Esposito is particularly quietly nefarious in I See You. Gustavo's hospital appearance is brilliant and subtly imposing. Lionel, or rather his remaining half, crawling toward a sort of stunned Walt, is not only super tense, it's also an interesting visual parallel to Season 3's opening crawling-centric scene. Gus's hit of Don Juan Bolsa is undoubtedly a cool moment, but it feels even more so impactful and monumental after having viewed Better Call Saul. 19. Aaron Paul is excellent and so bloody intense and committed here, particularly in the final sequence of Confessions, as Jesse attempts to commence the burning down of the White family house. Walt's confession, the presentation of it, Hank and Marie's flabbergasted reactions, it's utterly brilliant, primarily in regard to the construction of Walt's taped tale, which is impressively and ingeniously practically entirely based in fact, while simultaneously being completely fictional. It's masterful storytelling. 18. Granite State is a rather harrowing, extremely effective piece. The final scene, consisting of the reignition of Walt's pride, as well as the incorporation of the series' theme song, is a fantastic setup for the series finale, while the amazing Aaron Paul gives a heart-wrenching performance in Jesse's most arduous hour. 17. Walt is now unquestionably in full-on nefarious villain mode, as he has a plethora of individuals savagely whacked throughout multiple prisons within a couple minute span, while the final scene of Gliding Over All is one of the show's best, as Dean Norris subtly performs the moment when Hank finally discovers, after 4.5 sensational seasons of build-up, that Walt and Heisenberg are one and the same. 16. We're provided with a simple, awesome scene at the junkyard, starring the late Larry Hankin in his debut performance as the thankfully loyal and law-savvy Old Joe. This is the closest to this point that Hank has come to discovering Walt's true identity, and it is f***ing heart-pumping. A scared for Marie's life Hank ultimately getting a jarring phone call from her is beautifully directed, performed, and edited, and Sunset's final moments are incredibly foreboding, as Hank's potential death is made to feel imminent. 15. The tarantula-centric bookends are ultimately tragic. The practicality and truly engrossing planning behind this train heist and its execution is what I believe intrigues so many in regard to Dead Freight. Todd is also instantaneously transformed into a despicable villain, and a Bill Burr appearance certainly never hurts an episode standing. 14. The sensational Saul Goodman in his television debut absolutely steals the show here. The opening Badger-centric one-shot featuring guest star DJ Qualls, who also guest starred in Season 2 of Lost, is bloody excellent and impressive, while the scene in which Walt and Jesse deceive Hank and company in order to execute Saul's cleverly concocted plot is fun and super tense and slickly stylistically scored. 13. Gale's end is both tremendously tragic for the relatively innocent character of Mr. Bedecker. It's also evidently exceedingly damaging to the character of Jesse. You can see the deep pain in his eyes as his shaking hand points his weapon toward a terrified Gale. Jonathan Banks and Bryan Cranston really accentuate Full Measure's intensity with their real and raw performances. 12. ABQ presents a brilliant end to the Season 2 specific black and white tale, the opening scene concluding with the most high-stakes image we've seen up until this point in the series, as the monochrome filter turns to Technicolor. Skyler's confrontation of Walt features the masterful amalgamation of Walt's lies that have been slowly and subtly building throughout the first and second seasons. 11. Bryan Cranston is scarily good here, particularly in Crawlspace's heart-racingly intense final scene, which features some of the finest acting I've ever witnessed. The scene in the desert between Walter and Gus and company is bloody exceptionally chilling, thanks in large part due to a frightening, seething performance from Mr. Esposito. 10. The final scene of the Season 4 premiere is absolutely exceptional, boiling over with perpetual tension. It adds an entirely new layer of genuine menace and malice and violence to the already excellent character/creation of Gustavo Fring. The fact that this episode is bookended with the box cutter Gus ultimately uses to carve up Victor is extremely cool and clever. 9. Serialized television shows are immeasurably difficult to satisfyingly end, but Breaking Bad undoubtedly does so, and then some. It's so rewarding to see Walt's makeshift machine gun device rip through Jack and his fellow Nazi scum, as well as Jesse choking the life out of the piece of shit psychotic Todd with his chains. And it's great seeing Lydia get her comeuppance, especially given that it's caused by the ricin that had been set up quite some time ago. 8. Tuco is a maniac, but a supremely charismatic and entertaining one. We get our first Heisenberg appearance, which is amazing and literally explosive. All of the Walt and Hank stuff oozes with tension and ultra-intriguing subtext. 7. Dean Norris in particular shines in Blood Money. His performance is incredibly layered and perpetually committed. We've known since the pilot that a confrontation between Hank and Walt would be inevitable, and the final execution of it is, simply put, literal perfection in every respect of filmmaking. 6. Hermanos greatly deepens not only the already fascinating character of Gustavo Fring, but also the lore of this whole crime world. More specifically, the epic rivalry between Gus and Don Hector, while we're also gifted with the debut of the mega charismatic Don Eladio, portrayed by Stephen Bauer. 5. Bauer and Esposito in particular deliver expectedly excellent performances in this spectacular episode. I love the badassery displayed by Pinkman, which evidently impresses Mr. Fring. I'm immensely engrossed when viewing the Don's cleverly concocted murder, as well as Gus's riveting speech, which follows it. Essentially every scene in this series, or its spin-off, that take place in Eladio's pool, or at poolside, feels both monumental and cinematic. 4. Aaron Paul acts his ass off in a hospital bed after his most recent beating, via a pair of powerfully written monologues, both of which delivered to Walt. Dean Norris is bloody awesome, displaying Schrader's multitude of layers. In 1 Minute's beginnings, Hank is red hot with rage. Then we see a really introspective and kind of defeated Hank in an excellent scene between he and Marie, during which he claims to be unraveling. We momentarily get a kind of content Hank before he is forced into survivalist mode in an utterly intense life-or-death shootout in the DEA parking lot, which also happens to be one of the series' most heart-pumping scenes. 3. Ray Cruz's Tuco is an absolute blast, as this character is completely unpredictable and entirely unhinged. Hector and his Belle make a brilliant debut. Tio's presence increases this episode's great sense of tension. It's super satisfying seeing the badass Hank pop Tuco in the head, but honestly, it's even more so satisfying witnessing Jesse get some revenge, shooting Tuco in the gut, smacking him in the face with a rock, giving him a healthy rib kick or two, much like the ones Tuco had given him back in season 1. 2. Face Off is the best of the Breaking Bad season finales. The send-off for the pair of legendary characters, Gus Fring and Don Hector Salamanca, is jaw-droppingly amazing, as is the beautifully scored parking lot lead-up to it. The episode is exceedingly heart-pumping, ending with a twist that instantaneously deepens and darkens the show, and particularly Walter White himself. Number 1. Ozymandias is a truly masterful hour of television. It provides edge-of-your-seat, nail-biting drama in the form of Walt and Skyler's knife fight, which precedes the most monumental moment in the series, what I refer to as the "we're a family" scene. If I had a nickel for every time I've heard Walter claim that each of his, at times outrageous, actions are for his family and its betterment, I'd be a very wealthy boy indeed. This sentiment is undoubtedly true for a while, but as the show progresses, Walt becomes more so nefarious and deluded and arrogant and self-indulgent. He has lost sight of why he started in with all this crazy illegal shit in the first place. So after he and Skyler's intense Blade-centric battle, which is broken up by Flynn, a rageful Walt bellows, "What the hell is wrong with you? We're a family." Walt stares at his quote-unquote family as Flynn shields his mother from his father, while baby Holly bawls in the background. A once angered Walt now appears to be completely and utterly crushed as he whispers, as if to himself, "We're a family." It is in this moment that Walt realizes that he can no longer convince himself that that statement holds any water. He has fully and finally lost the one thing that initially drove his entire being. This whole concept also ties into the Ozymandias theme, as, if you're unaware, the poem features the collapse of a leader's empire and legacy, said arrogant leader having believed that his rule would be inevitable. 514 also provides us with some truly hard-hitting emotional gut punches in the form of Hank's horrific death, as well as Walt informing a now captured Jesse that he had the chance to save his late love Jane, but decided not to. A truth bomb we had anticipated being dropped for quite some time, which ultimately only accentuates the revelation's effectiveness. It catches you off guard, while you're still trying to process and grieve Hank's execution. This episode is beautifully directed by the talented Rian Johnson, while the always brilliant cast outdoes itself with a collection of exquisite performances from top to bottom.